Will it be another running back avalanche again this evening? How high will the Joes push up the tight ends on the board? And who will be the team that dominates this draft from start until finish? Follow along with the live draft board and listen to our pick-by-pick analysis as we call the action from the 2021 FFPC Pros vs. Joes Shake and Bake League number 2 to see who will win a 2022 FFPC main event squad. We've got a great show for you. Ezekiel Elliott is here. I'm Eric Balkman. Stick around. Your high-stakes fantasy football hour starts now.
Broadcast live and heard around the world, you are now listening to the most entertaining hour of radio on the planet. Welcome to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, presented by MyFFPC.com, with your hosts Eric Balkman and Ezekiel Elliott. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour is your home for analysis from the best players in the world. And now, because no one else was available, here's Eric Balkman and Ezekiel Elliott.
Hey, thanks a lot, Rob. Greetings and salutations, all of alcoholics and Ferrelliacs. Welcome to the latest episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by MyFFPC.com. I am your slightly above average host, Eric Balkman, and my co-host is the definitive commissioner of fantasy football, Ezekiel Elliott. Tonight, we have the second of 6 special episodes for you this year. It's the 2021 FFPC Pros vs. Joes Shake and Bake League number 2 draft tonight, and we'll be covering it for 2 full hours. You can follow the live draft board at youtube.com/highstakesfantasyfootball. Shout out to the chat room right now. We got a lot of names in there and probably a lot of questions from the high stakes players hanging out for all the pros and Joes tonight coming from them. You can post those questions you might have in there, guys and girls. Connect with us on Twitter at HSFF or at Eric Balkman or at Ezekiel Elliott. Don't forget about the KFFSC at KFFSC or KFFSC.com. Facebook.com/HSFFR is where to reach us. And if you want to talk with us tonight, give us a call. It's 347-426-3682. That's 347-GAME-OVA. You can also always email the show at the inbox at highstakesfantasyfootball@gmail.com. If you have any questions for us, send them in now. We'll try to get to all the chat room questions, all the tweets, all the emails throughout the show tonight, thanks to the hard work of our producer and mutual friend, Rob, and our audio engineer, and my best friend, Bryce. As a reminder, Monday is the deadline for the 2021 FFPC main event early draft slot announcement. When you pay for your team in full, you'll get your draft slot on August 1st. And remember, if you already have a team in the main event in the FFPC, you're going to get $400 off each additional team you add on. So square those balances away now at myffpc.com. All right, let's get to it, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight's drafters. Leading things off, former guest of the show is Jay Flake in the 1 spot, the FFPC Joe. Jeremy Brown, who's had a lot of success in this contest from Dynasty Trades HQ, he is in the 2nd spot. Mike Stanowski, a guy we just had on this program as a guest, I don't know, about 3 or 4 weeks ago, he's drafting 3rd. Jason Petropoulos from Brodo Fantasy cleaning things up from the 4 spot. Mark and Amy Palmer will work their magic from the 5 hole tonight, along with Rich Rebar from Sharp Football Analysis picking 6th. Jason Kahn and Aaron Laser, former world champions of fantasy football, they are drafting 7th. And then Brian Drake from Fighting Chance Fantasy and Dwayne McFarland, another former guest of this show from Pro Football Focus, they are picking 8th. Robert Trends, the FFPC Joe in the 9 spot. Michael Leone from Establish the Run, 2nd consecutive night we'll have an Establish the Run drafter. He is picking 10th. The reigning Kentucky Fantasy Football State champions, Bradley Petrie and Darren Larson, picking 11th. And, of course, Fantasy Points co-founder Scott Barrett picking 12th tonight. That is where we are at. Now, we are already through round 1 tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Without further ado, let's get through this first round. There were a couple of surprising picks, and you can feel free to offer your feedback on them. Christian McCaffrey to Jay Flake is the first overall pick tonight. Jeremy Brown, a little bit of a curveball here. No Dalvin Cook, no Travis Kelce. It's Ezekiel Elliott. He takes at the 102 tonight. Second overall pick, Ezekiel Elliott. Hopefully we get a chance to catch up with Jeremy Brown and ask him about that pick tonight. Dalvin Cook is selected third by Stanowski, and then Jason Petropoulos takes Travis Kelce tonight from the 4 spot. Kelce, the first tight end off the board. Another couple of running backs. Alvin Kamara goes in the 5 spot to Mark and Amy Palmer. And then Rich Rebar, this is interesting. So I teased it at the show last night. I was wondering how far Saquon Barkley would fall in the draft based on the nebulous reporting that we're getting about his knee, how healthy it is. He danced around the topic with Rich Eisen last week. He danced around the topic again. I think it was Adam Schefter or the Giants reporters today. He goes 111 last night. Rich Rebar takes him at the 106 tonight. Would love to hear his thought process on taking Barkley as the 5th running back off the board at the 106. We saw Darren Waller go 105 last night. He goes 107 tonight to Khan and Laser as the 2nd tight end off the board. Another couple of running backs here, as it has been all running backs and tight ends here in the first round. Derrick Henry to Brian Drake and Dwayne McFarland here at the 108. Jonathan Taylor, a guy who barely made it in to the first round last night. He goes at the 109 tonight to Robert Trent. The first receiver is indeed off the board. Stephon Diggs is that player tonight, and it is Michael Leone from Establish the Run taking Diggs as the number 1 receiver off the board tonight. Austin Eckler, ladies and gentlemen, goes off the board as the 8th running back selected in round 1. Eckler to Frying Pan Inc. FPI, that is Petrie and Larson here at the 111, and then Tyreek Hill to Scott Barrett from Fantasy Points after that. So you have 2 receivers taken in round 1. You have 2 tight ends taken in round 1, and then running backs rule the roost the rest of the way. Moving on to round 2, which has just completed. So Barrett is the only player tonight in the Pros vs. Joe's League Number 2 Shake and Bake Draft to start off receiver. He goes Tyreek Hill at the 112 and then Devontae Adams at the 201. So you're looking at Hill and Adams as the start for Scott Barrett. Bear in mind, and I should have mentioned this at the top of the show, this is a non-managed draft. This is an 18-round FFPC slim draft. There are no kickers selected. There are no defenses selected. And this is a best ball league. As the season drones on, these guys can check in on their drafts to see how it happens, or check in on their scenes to see what's happening with the league, but they don't manage it. There's no ad drops. The winner of this league will get a free 2022 FFPC main event entry that's worth the better part of $2,000. Second place, they get nothing. So it is an all-or-nothing league here as Barrett kicks things off in the second round with Devontae Adams. All right, moving on. One of 6 teams in the draft tonight to start off running back. FPI goes Austin Eckler, the 111, and then the 202, it is Antonio Gibson from the Washington football team. So Eckler and Gibson are the way that Petrie and Larson start their draft off. George Kittle is the 3rd tight end selected tonight. He goes to Michael Leone at the 203. So he starts off his draft with receiver tight end, Diggs and Kittle. At the number 9 spot is Robert Trent. He pairs Cam Akers with his first-round pick, Jonathan Taylor. So he starts off running back, pair of sophomore running backs in the league. Taylor out of Wisconsin, Akers out of Florida State, now with Indianapolis and the Los Angeles Rams, respectively. It is Taylor and Akers for his start there from the 9 hole. DeAndre Hopkins, the 4th receiver off the board, to Drake and McFarland as the 5th pick in the second round, followed by Calvin Ridley, the new target monster in Atlanta. He goes at the 206 tonight to Khan and Laser to pair with Darren Waller. All right, moving on. Aaron Jones goes off the board here at the 207. Rich Rebar starts his draft off. Saquon Barkley, Aaron Jones. He is the 3rd team to start off running back, Barkley and Jones. Then from the 5 spot, it's Mark and Amy Palmer going with Michael Thomas here at the 208 spot. That is the 6th receiver off the board, followed by Justin Jefferson, the final receiver selected in the second round. Jason Petropoulos from Brodo Fantasy takes him there. So he starts off tight end receiver. So 3 squads, interestingly enough, not necessarily in this order, but they start off the draft with both a receiver and a tight end. That's Petropoulos from the 4 spot. That's Khan and Laser from the 7 spot. And that's Leone from the 10 spot with a receiver and tight end to start. No running backs for any of those guys in the first 2 rounds. We have a trio of running backs to complete round 2, ladies and gentlemen. Nick Chubb to Mike Stanowski, then Najee Harris, the rookie, to Jeremy Brown. Jeremy Brown takes Najee Harris to pair with Ezekiel Elliott, who he took at the 102. Harris off the board with the penultimate pick in the second round, followed by Joe Mixon as Jay Flake begins his draft with 2 heavy volume guys that are going to be on the field a bunch this year in McCaffrey and Mixon there. So you have 6 teams in this draft tonight, starting off running back. With an FFPC slim, there is an emphasis placed on volume and touches, and certainly we see that here in the first 2 rounds tonight with 6 squads going with a running back start. Now, that's going to dilute the running back player pool here going forward, but it's also going to create a lot of receivers and tight ends going off the board starting in round 3 is what we're seeing right now. Want to bring in my co-host for his analysis on the first 2 rounds. You follow him on Twitter at @JFarrellElliott. You play in the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship at KFFSC.com. He is the commissioner, quite frankly, the definitive commissioner of fantasy football, Farrell Elliott. Farrell, welcome into the program. We got 2 rounds off the board. I think the big story of round 1 was Jeremy Brown going Ezekiel Elliott with the 2nd overall pick. What do you make of that, man?
You know, Zeke is gaining, Balky, a lot of respect. Everyone talks about how he is refocused, how he's conditioned, how they expect a big comeback for him this year with the Cowboys. And I can agree with that. He gets his quarterback back. He returns some better play on the offensive line. His receivers have another year of seasoning under them. The Cowboys team is a soft landing spot for any featured running back. Zeke Elliott has a wide range of potential outcomes, but you would expect him to be in the top 5 running backs. And could he challenge McCaffrey for the number 1 spot? Perhaps.
Yeah, I think it's definitely possible. Non-zero chance of that happening. And Jeremy Brown obviously knows Ezekiel Elliott well, given all the dynasty prep he did on him when he was at Ohio State, and then obviously coming into the NFL as well. He knows what his worth is, and certainly for a redraft-only league, Brown would be the guy to know about him. Wasn't getting him at the 211, so he gets him at the 102. Farrell, the other thing, too, I wanted to bring up tonight, we saw the report from Jordan Renan on ESPN.com today about Saquon Barkley kind of smiling, saying, we'll see if I'm going to be ready for training camp, and then wasn't smiling so much when he was asked about week 1. So this is interesting because he went at the 111 last night. I was thinking after the report today, we might see him go in the 2nd round of the Pros versus Joes. He actually goes earlier tonight. Rich Rebar from Sharp Football Analysis takes Saquon Barkley at the 106. Is that too high for you based on the report we heard today?
Rich may not have been privy to that report, but yeah, I don't like what I'm hearing. This is the only player pre-camp, short of Aaron Rodgers, that you're just not hearing much encouragement from, even the player. A lot of players now are showing up in various media outlets and so many ways that they can communicate that they are ready to play. They are hungry to play. They're wanting to return to the field. They expect big things. They're going to have a Pro Bowl season. You're not hearing any of that from Barkley, and it may be because some of it is true.
Let's move on to the 3rd round here as we continue the pick-by-pick analysis. We're seeing sort of like what we saw last night, right? We saw a lot of receivers go off in the 3rd round. We're seeing a lot of the receivers go off in the 3rd round because of the emphasis put on running backs in the first 2 rounds. You're looking at 14 running backs out of the first 24 picks being selected tonight. The receivers went fast and furious here in the 3rd round with 7 of them going off the board. Jay Flake got things started with DK Metcalf to be his number 1 receiver as the 8th receiver off the board. Then we see a bunch of sophomore running backs here right in a row. Jeremy Brown goes with J.K. Dobbins, then Clyde Edwards-Helaire to Mike Stanowski. Now, what's interesting about that is these guys are drafting in the 2 and 3 holes. They both start with 3 straight running backs. They can start 3 running backs every single week, but they start their draft with 3 straight running backs. We'll see how they fill in the cracks later. With Dobbins, Edwards-Helaire going to Brown and Stanowski, respectively. DeAndre Swift, the number 1 running back drafted by Jason Petropoulos from Brodo Fantasy Football. And then we see a receiver run. Allen Robinson to Mark and Amy Palmer. A.J. Brown to Rich Rebar. Keenan Allen to Con and Laser. Terry McLaurin to Brian Drake and Dwayne McFarland. Then we see the rookie Kyle Pitts finally getting selected tonight to Robert Trends as his number 1 tight end at the 309. Pair of Cowboys receivers right after that. It's C.D. Lamb to Michael Leone, and then Amari Cooper to FPI there with the penultimate pick of the 3rd round. And then Chris Carson, a guy who went early in the 3rd last night, falls to the 312 tonight to Scott Barrett from Fantasy Points. That is your 3rd round, ladies and gentlemen. Farrell, in an 18-round slim draft like this, obviously people want to get those running backs early. Is 3 straight running backs the way to go when you're drafting from the front end of this process, like Brown and Stanowski were from 2 and 3? Is that a place, or is that a spot where you'd want to start off your draft with 3 straight running backs?
I think so, because that match of the 6 running backs for these 2 squads, you can't argue with any one of those players. Now you've got that set, and that despite how many wide receivers are going off the board, tight ends still here in this format push wide receivers down further. At least 3 or 4 are already gone that would not be gone in non-tight end premium formats. And I only bring that up because we just feel that the wide receiver core is so very deep here with potential of 70, 80, even 90 catch players going in the early double-digit rounds. So in this format especially, go get your running backs. I think that's a smart move, and those guys not only did it, but they got the pick of the party, so to speak.
You know what's interesting, too, is the 2 players that did it, the only 2 players in this draft to start off with 3 straight running backs. Farrell, we interviewed Mike Stanowski on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour roughly a month or so ago, and we're really impressed with his analysis, his insight into how he likes to build teams, not only in the main event in the FFPC, but these slim drafts as well. And then the other guy, Jeremy Brown, as Ron Jeremy in the BTR chat just pointed out, Jeremy Brown's won his individual league in the Pros vs. Joes both in 2020 and 2019. So he's looking to three-peat as a champ this year. He'll be looking to take down his first ever FFPC main event come September this year when he is either drafting online or live at Planet Hollywood on the Strip in Las Vegas, Nevada. So certainly smart guys doing what smart guys do there in the 3rd round. Moving on to the 4th. David Montgomery is who Scott Barrett selects as his 2nd running back, as the first selection off the board in the 4th round. And then a pair of Buccaneers receivers, Mike Evans to Petrie and Larson, and then Chris Godwin to Michael Leone from Establish the Run. He is the first player tonight with 3 receivers drafted. Chris Godwin joins that squad of Stephon Diggs, George Kittle, and C.D. Lamb. No running backs yet, so he's might have a 0 RB drafter here in our midst from Leone. We'll see what happens here as the 5th round rolls on. But completing the 4th round, Miles Sanders is the 3rd running back selected by Robert Trends. T.J. Hawkinson, the number 5 tight end selected tonight, and the number 1 tight end selected by Brian Drake and Dwayne McFarland from the 8-hole. Quarterback has been cracked. Patrick Mahomes, once again, is the first quarterback off the board to Jason Kahn and Aaron Laser. And then Mark Andrews right after that as the next pick in the 4th round to Rich Rebar as his number 1 tight end. All receivers here from the for the rest of the 4th round. The former Falcon and new Titan, Julio Jones, joins Mark and Amy Palmer's team at the 408 selection. Robert Woods to Jason Petropoulos as his number 2 receiver. His real-life teammate Cooper Kupp goes right after him in Mike Stanowski's number 1 receiver after he started off with 3 straight running backs. Jeremy Brown does the same thing here as he goes receiver with the final, the second to last pick of the 4th round. Tyler Lockett is his number 1 receiver. Maybe not the number 1 receiver for Seattle, but the number 1 receiver for the Dynasty Trades HQ podcast co-host. And then Adam Thielen, the final pick of the 4th round to former guest of the show, Jay Flake, joining DK Metcalf as he starts off running back, receiver in the 4th round. Farrell, when would you start looking? I can't remember if we talked, and I know it's only the second day of doing this, but the analysis is already starting to blur, and I forgive me if we talked about this last night, but when you want to be elite at quarterback, what round would you start looking at drafting a quarterback if you wanted to get an elite one right away, whether it's Mahomes or Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, any of those guys? Is it the fourth round? Would you wait a little bit more? What's your philosophy on quarterbacks in an 18-round slim draft?
In this format, I'm shocked that the quarterbacks are going off that quickly. Now, Mahomes obviously is going to lead the party, and why not? But it will be, as we look at the fifth round, I think we'll see even more quarterbacks exposed there to the early drafters. And I don't understand it, especially if you're going to do three quarterbacks. There's excellent quarterbacks in the 9, 10, 11th rounds that when you begin to put them together or bookend them back-to-back throughout your drafting, you're going to get the performance of these elite quarterbacks that are off the board. So I think the guys that are taking the elite quarterbacks, they may have come to the decision that they're freeing up an extra spot, and we'll see if that happens. But if any of these guys spend 3 spots on a quarterback, I think they're making a mistake.
347-426-3682, 347-GAME-OVA if you want to give us a call and give us your thoughts on the second of 6 live Pros versus Joes drafts that we are covering right here on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. 5th round is now complete. It is the quarterback round, as Farrell just gave you his elite quarterback analysis. A lot of elite quarterbacks going off the board here in the 5th. Jay Flake uses the 501 on one Dak Prescott over Murray, over Allen. Dak Prescott is the second quarterback drafted tonight. And Farrell, I guess the question I have for you here, remember how good that Cowboys offense looked last year with Dak Prescott in charge? Then he gets hurt, the whole team and the whole offense really goes to pot. I'm actually surprised that Dak Prescott is not being drafted as the second quarterback off the board more often this year in these FFPC Slims. You know, and shout out to Darren Armani, who runs FantasyMojo.com, who provides all this great FFPC draft analysis, including the ADP that we'll be citing on the show tonight. He does a great job with that. You should definitely be subscribing to his site if you play in the FFPC. But Dak Prescott normally going off the board at QB4 at the end of the 5th round. Farrell, people are drafting him on average over the last 5 days after Josh Allen, after Kyler Murray. Why is there not more Dak Prescott love this year for Dallas?
I don't know. It's a recency bias, perhaps, but it's somewhat foolish, I think. I fall for it because when he's available as the 5th and sometimes even the 6th quarterback, I can't let it go past me if I can get him in the draft. It's a wonderful opportunity to stack him with his receivers of either Lamb or Cooper. Gallup comes later. I don't understand it because, and if you question this strategy, you should go back and watch some of the games that they're replaying, either streaming or on the NFL Network, and you'll see Dak Prescott at his best. And you talk about another guy that's aching to come back, would be a great competitor, and bring that to his team. Yeah. I want to be in business with Dak Prescott, Bucky, and I believe that he will supplant some of the guys as we move. Some of the guys, some of the time, as we move into the main event.
One of the great things about the Pros versus Joes every year, it is a total get your guys format. You don't know what the other Pros and Joes are going to be doing. You don't know what they're capable of. Anybody could go anywhere, even more so. And a lot of people say that about the FFPC. You know, anybody can go anywhere. You can't follow ADP that much because each draft is so unique. But I think here, if you're Jay Flake and you do like what you were saying, Farrell, if you do like Prescott as a quarterback this year, you ain't getting him at the final pick in the 6th round. And if you like him better than Murray and Allen, you have to take him with the first selection of the 5th round, which is exactly what Jay Flake did there. All right, moving on. DJ Moore, the second receiver drafted by Jeremy Brown, here to pair with Tyler Lockett. Josh Jacobs, Mike Stanowski's 4th running back. He grabs Josh Jacobs as the 21st running back off the board at the 503. Speaking of 3, those were the next 3 picks. Quarterbacks, that is. Kyler Murray to Jason Petropoulos, Josh Allen to Mark and Amy Palmer, and then Lamar Jackson to Rich Rebar. Interestingly enough, Rich Rebar took Mark Andrews in the 4th round. Lamar Jackson is his 5th-round pick, so he has that Ravens hook up there with the tight end and the quarterback. Javonte Williams right after that, the rookie running back out of Denver, is going to be the top running back selected by Jason Kahn and Aaron Laser there from the 7-hole. A bunch of receivers then. Odell Beckham to Drake and McFarland. Jamar Chase, the new Bengals rookie, he goes to number 9 spot. Robert Trends, the FFPC Joe. T. Higgins, the 4th receiver selected by Michael Leone. And then you're looking at Deontay Johnson from Pittsburgh to FPI. That's Darren Larson and Bradley Petrie there. Final pick of the 5th round is Travis Etienne to Scott Barrett. So after Barrett goes heavy receiver here with Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams, he pounds the backfield. Carson Montgomery and now Etienne in the 5th round. Farrell, I was just crushed. In fact, I was doing a local NFL draft special here in Northeast Wisconsin for the local terrestrial radio station I work for. And we covered the first round for, it was about 2.5 hours, basically until the Packers made their pick, which is all anybody up here cared about. But I was talking earlier on the program how I didn't draft. I got James Robinson off the waiver wire in a lot of my dynasty leagues in the preseason and loved, obviously, what he did in 2020 for me. And I thought the signing of Carlos Hyde kind of got me in the clear with not trading Robinson, because Hyde's not the type of guy that would all of a sudden become the bell cow there. He's more of a backup, maybe, take some of the carries away from Robinson, but Robinson's still going to be the bell cow. And I don't know how we didn't get a massive 6-figure FCC fine when I saw the Jaguars take Travis Etienne late in the 1st round. I just lost it on air. I was so frustrated. James Robinson in so many dynasty leagues, and now that's out the window. Or is it? Can Travis Etienne, I'll phrase the question like this. Do you think Travis Etienne, how likely is it that Travis Etienne and James Robinson can both be top 25 running backs this year in the same backfield in Jacksonville?
Everyone who's listening to us regularly, Balky, knows what I feel about James Robinson. And every day that we get closer to the start of camp, I feel better about having James Robinson on the team. Now, I'm not joined by a lot of people here because he's remaining in the 7th round, and he hasn't gone yet tonight. And it's a situation where people need to look at the improving offense that Jacksonville is going to have. The fact that Etienne has already been it's already been communicated that he is going to be a move halfback, very similar to what we're going to see with Drake out with the Raiders. There's enough opportunity, and it could be better opportunity for James Robinson. How many times, if you'll go back and watch the games, because there's so much value in watching the games, how many times James Robinson last year have to run the ball into the stacked box? We talk about all these players who were compromised by playing with quarterbacks, subpar quarterbacks last year, and Robinson had that experience while down at Jacksonville. He's got a lot of things that are going to be better for him this year, more weapons around him, more opportunity not to be the focus of the defense. I like James Robinson this year, and I think drafters should too. Whoever gets him, perhaps our friend Mike Stefanski will continue to draft running backs, but it's a situation where James Robinson, like we said, Balky, he's this year's James Robinson as well.
Yeah, we did say that, and I hope you're right on that, because that would help me out of a couple of jams, as Melissa McCarthy from SNL would say. We want to bring you the 6th round here shortly and tell you exactly what happened there. Before we get to the 6th round, I do want to go out to the phone lines and take a phone call from the 610 right now. 610, you are live on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour's coverage of the FFPC Pros versus Joes. I am Balky. He is Farrell. Who are you?
Balky and Farrell. It's Darren Armani. How we doing, boys?
We are doing good. And by the way, Darren Armani, gave him the shout-out right away. Webmaster over at FantasyMojo.com. Follow him on Twitter at FantasyMojo. Basically the godfather of the Pros versus Joes. Basically, and I some people say, oh, Darren helps put this together every year. No, he basically puts the whole thing together. So shout-out to you, my friend. Awesome job, as always. We had a great draft last night. We're having a great draft tonight. I noticed that you are in the draft tomorrow night, Darren. Normally you wait for the final draft just in case you have to fill in for anybody everywhere. Why are you switching from draft 6 to draft 3 this year?
I ping-pong around. I was actually originally slated for draft 5 next Monday night, and then somebody had a conflict and nobody wanted to switch, so I took one for the team and I switched with the guy. So I'm in the draft tomorrow night. So everybody better show up on next week's drafts because I can't fill in for that. We'll have to, go to the bullpen if something happens there. I'm not going to mind it.
Yeah, well, and I'll tell you this too right now. Thanks to the hard work of another person at the FFPC who deserves all the credit in the world, Chris Lambert, I think she already has assembled a murderer's row bullpen here. So if it gets to be that way, where we do need to call in on a closer to make sure we have the spot filled, she is going to Connie Mack it for us and fill in no problem there with some closer coming out of the bullpen. So Darren, you saw the draft last night. You see the draft tonight. I led off with the show with this tonight. I was wondering if Saquon Barkley would fall to the second round tonight based on the reporting we saw from Jordan Renan. He goes 111 yesterday. Rich Rebar grabs him at the 106 today. How surprised were you to see Barkley go as the fifth running back off the board at the 106 tonight?
It's not going to shock me to see him, go in a wide range. It's going to be depending upon the person. So, but when you see, so the interesting thing about these drafts is, everybody's got their hot takes on Twitter about players and whatnot. But this is where the rubber hits the road right here. When these guys, there's a big prize on the line. They got one shot at this, and you see them, taking the guys that they have faith in. So if Rich Rebar, who's very well respected, is going after Barkley, that should send a message to people.
Yeah, no, I think you're right for sure. Darren, what do you think on the biggest change? What's the biggest change you've noticed when you compile the data based on when this used to be a 28-round best ball marathon with kickers and defenses? Now it's just the 18-round slim sprint. What's the biggest difference you see? Do you see more home run swings in these type of formats now, knowing that every little thing counts, and if you can hit on a guy in the mid rounds that may represent a pretty low floor but a tremendously high ceiling, you see a lot of guys going for that? What's the biggest difference that you've seen since the format switch?
I think it's actually less of that because with the smaller roster, you can't afford to have too many dart throws, right, and hope that they catch fire late in the season. You've got limited roster spots. You got to start scoring points right out of the gate. You can't wait for Tony Pollard to suddenly enter the lineup in week 15. So I'm seeing more, not like a conservative approach, but it's got to be people who have like a solid outlook, and not like back in the days when we had 28 rounds. You would see, I think that was like Terry McLaurin was, I think, one of those guys that would get drafted round 26, 27 that first year he came out. I think you see less of that now because there's just not room for as many of those guys.
That's a good point. Hey, Darren, I really
go ahead, Farrell.
Boggy, I wanted to thank Darren before we went much longer. I was really thrilled tonight when I saw this roster. It's near and dear to my heart in the number 7 and the number 11 spot. In 7 we have Con and Lacer, tremendous success they've had across formats in different leagues, and they play in Kentucky every year. And in the number 11 spot, Petri and Larson, who are our 2020 KFFSC state champions. So I was very thrilled to watch what they're doing. So I already had built-in guys that I'm rooting for in this draft, and all of them, or each of them, have utilized your data that you've produced in the Mojo.
Yeah, there's a lot of under the radar guys in these drafts because a lot of the very successful high stake players, they're not necessarily out on Twitter, going back and forth. But like last night we have Jeff Tirabassi, who's very well accomplished, and there are many 6-figure winners sort of hidden within the Joe's lineups here that people aren't aware of. So if the pros come in with too much confidence, they should really be on their guard because the Joes are, they're laying at weight, ready to take down these pros here.
Yeah, and that's sometimes by design too. A lot of the pros out there don't want you to know how successful they are because part of the reason is because that's how they have become so successful is nobody knows who they are. And Jeff Tirabassi, great example of that. Guy who's done very well in the FFPC main event, former high society champion, former big payback champion. Those are $10,000 and $5,000 buy-in leagues, respectively. He's done very, very well for himself there. Darren, you are picking 9th tomorrow. Now, 9th pick last night, Billy Muzio took Tyreek Hill. 9th pick tonight, you have a situation where Robert Trenz takes Jonathan Taylor. You think either of those guys will be your selection at 109 tomorrow, or are you looking elsewhere?
I think the first 8 players off the board are going to be pretty. They're pretty fixed. I don't know what to expect at 9. There's a couple different avenues that I can go down, but we'll just have to wait and see. So I don't really have a draft plan other than to just take what's there and then go down the appropriate path when I see what I get.
Story of the first round tonight, Darren, was Jeremy Brown. At least in the first round, the story of the night was Jeremy Brown taking Ezekiel Elliott at the 102. We got Farrell's thoughts on that earlier. This is a situation where if you want him and you like him best, you're not going to be able to get him in the second, so you sort of have to take him 102. What do you make of that trigger pull with Ezekiel Elliott to Jeremy Brown from Dynasty Trades HQ going at the 102 over guys like Dalvin Cook, Travis Kelce, and more?
I mean, it's not – you can rationalize that pick. I mean, it looks weird because we don't see it that often, but, I mean, if Dallas is back on their game, then that certainly could pay off. And Brown has won. He's been in it 2 years, and he's won both years, so it's kind of hard to knock him. Now, the pick that he made in the third round is also suspect, with Dobbins going ahead of CEH. That's also odd. But, he's got a track record, so what can we do?
Darren, you crunch the numbers, you crunch the data on these, not only the slim leagues here, but also obviously all the best balls, the Football Guys Players Championship, the main event. What do you make of teams who go 3 straight running backs to start it off, like Brown and Stanowski did tonight from the 2 and 3 spots? And then conversely, I guess we could talk about Michael Leone's team in the 10 hole where he doesn't take a running back until the 6th round. What do you make of those starts, both the 0 RB and the robust RB?
I mean, the robust RB, it's proven to have worked. You got to make sure that those guys are healthy. And I tweeted out the 7 winning lineups from last year's Pros versus Joes, and you saw a whole variety of roster constructions. So any of these can work. It really comes down to landing the players who are going to score the most points, right? I mean, but drafting this early, you got to avoid injuries. There's a lot of unknowns ahead of you, so there's a good bit of luck too. But I don't mind like a robot. Like I think Jay Reed and Scott Connor last night went for 4 running backs right out the gate, and it's a viable strategy. If you remember Chris Banks years and years ago,
oh yeah, I play fantasy.
He only drafted 4 running backs. He took a similar approach. To this day, he still has the highest point score for Pros versus Joes in the season, even through today. But that year, he only took 4, and he took them early. So I mean, it's has had success in the past.
And crack a beer open, because this will be the first Tim McCulloch mention tonight. The guy who only drafted 1 tight end in a 28-round best ball, Antonio Gates, and we all said his team was dead in the water. What does he do? Not only wins his league, he wins the whole GD thing. So congratulations to Tim McCulloch. I have to bring him up every single year. I think he's just focusing on baseball now. God only knows what he's bringing all his fans and all his readers and subscribers with baseball analysis. Certainly everybody who reads what he has to say is certainly getting an edge. Darren, you have won the Kings Classic before. You are a former Pros versus Joes League champ. You are a former Scott Fishbowl League champ as well. And you are the creator of not only FantasyMojo.com, but the FFPC Pros versus Joes. Can you pimp up FantasyMojo.com here a little bit? I mean, we talked about all the great ADP data, all the boards that you can see there. Obviously, the Stack Finder is awesome for anybody who's participating in the inaugural FFPC Best Ball Tournament or the Football Guys Players Championship. What else am I missing? Why else should everybody go to FantasyMojo.com?
It's essentially a one-stop shop for a high-stakes player. The boards, the ADP, the Stack Finders. I find the historical waiver wire data invaluable once the season hits. I mean, you can pretty much know exactly what players are going to cost based upon what they went for in previous years as the weeks went on. There's analysis of best ball construction. Obviously, the pros versus Joes, the complete history. If people go to the front page of FantasyMojo.com, there's a virtual site tour that walks you through the 10 most popular features. And another thing that we have is, if you're an FFPC player, we have like an ownership report that we have for each person. So it basically shows you, your player ownership broken down by the specific contest format. So, what is my ownership in the main events? What is it in the football guys? But it breaks it all down, slices and dices. So yeah, it's everything that the high stakes player would need. And one more thing I want to pimp before I go: if anybody who's heading out to the Fantasy Football Expo in Canton, Ohio, in about 4 weeks, I am doing a presentation on transitioning to high stakes fantasy football. So that's like a high stakes 101 for people who might not yet be playing in the FFPC or any other high stakes event. They'll want to check that out. That's going to be a very good informative presentation for people, I feel.
Darren, we certainly appreciate you checking in with us tonight. Don't be a stranger. Good luck in your league tomorrow. I hope you crush it. I hope you win that 2022 FFPC main event squad. And maybe we'll touch base again with you before the PVJ ends. For sure, we'll hook up in Vegas at Planet Hollywood, man.
All right, that sounds good, guys. We'll talk to you later.
Thank you, Darren.
Darren Armani, ladies and gentlemen, the founder of FantasyMojo.com, the creator of the FFPC Pros versus Joes, and really the curator of putting this together every single year. This contest simply would not happen if it were not for him. And by the way, as long as I'm saying that, there's a lot of FFPC players out there who would not have a lot of money in their wallets if it wasn't for Darren Armani's website, too. So make sure you are checking that out. Let's get into I guess we'll try to go to the sixth round here, Farrell. We can fall down the rabbit hole so easily with Darren Armani. But as we go to the sixth round here, kicking things off, the number one tight end for Scott Barrett is Dallas Goedert. Brandon Ayuk, the fourth receiver selected by Petrie and Larson. Mike Davis is Leone's first running back there. As he goes 0 RB, Mike Davis is his first running back selected in the sixth round. Kenny Golladay, the new Giant, is now a new member of Team 9. That is Robert Trends, the FFPC Joe. Kareem Hunt after that, followed by your boy Chase Claypool, Takan, and Laser. Robbie Anderson to Rebar, and then Juju Smith-Schuster over to the 5 spot. That is Mark and Amy Palmer. Miles Gaskin, another Farrell Elliott favorite. He goes to Jason Petropoulos from Brodo Fantasy Football. And then Russell Wilson, Trey Sermon, and Noah Fant finish off the sixth round here as we move forward into the seventh. No surprise when we see it. We talked a little bit about the Steelers receivers last night, Farrell. Claypool and Smith-Schuster seem tied together at the hip in ADP, not only for the FFPC Slim right now, but also for the Football Guys Players Championship. I know you love Claypool, but are you surprised that Claypool and Smith-Schuster are going so close together on average in these drafts?
No, I'm not, because you can't really separate them statistically. Schuster's probably going to catch some more passes. Claypool's going to get better yards. I heard a commentary recently about the play of the quarterback. It was something to the effect of Roethlisberger's arm is going to fall off. I had to chuckle about that. What was happening with this club last year is that they were keen on the pass. Defenses were keen on the pass because they had so little production out of the running back position. That's going to change. They had a very, very nice draft pick, and it's going to change the whole look of this team. It's going to free these receivers up. These guys that had huge, huge numbers in receptions last year, they're going to even be better with touchdowns. They're going to even be better with yardage. And I think what's going to happen is we're going to see a focus on the 3 top receivers. So these guys are all being drafted as they should be. And, the 4 and 5 receiver, very small contribution from the tight end in Pittsburgh, although I do like the rookie that nobody's drafting. But anyway, that's a long answer to probably what we got a lot of questions tonight. That's something that we're seeing with Pittsburgh. We're seeing it with Dallas. Who else are we seeing it with in these tandem of wide receivers from the same team? The
L.A. Rams, I think, would be another one, too, with Woods and Kupp. Lockett, Metcalf.
Yep.
Lockett and Metcalf are kind of separated by a round now, but Woods and Kupp have been going back-to-back quite a bit. We've seen that quite often. And to a certain extent, we saw it with Evans and Godwin going back-to-back tonight, too. We saw Woods and Kupp go back-to-back, Evans and Godwin go back-to-back, and Cooper and Lamb all go back-to-back. These guys are teammates, and Claypool and Smith-Schuster only separated by Robbie Anderson, too. So we're seeing that a lot. Speaking of teammates, another pair that went back-to-back, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins in Cincinnati, they go in the 5th round. And then lonely Tyler Boyd slips to the 701 to Jay Flake as his number 3 receiver. Matthew Stafford goes after that to Jeremy Brown as his number 1 quarterback, followed by DJ Chark, the number 2 receiver for Mike Stanowski after he goes heavy running back early, Chase Edmonds and James Robinson to Petropoulos and then Palmer, respectively. Jerry Jeudy, Michael Carter, and Devontae Smith. So Jeudy, the second-year sophomore to Rebar, I guess all sophomores are second years. Michael Carter, and he did redshirt. Michael Carter, the rookie, to the draft head junkies. That's Jason Kahn and Aaron Laser. And then Devontae Smith right after that. So a pair of rookies there. Smith going to Drake and McFarland. Justin Herbert, number 1 tight end, quarterback selected for Robert Trends tonight. And then Deebo Samuel is wide receiver number 5 for Leone. So he will go 0 RB, drafts the 4 receivers and tight end in the first 5 rounds, gets Mike Davis in the 6th. He goes right back to receiver in the 7th round, eschewing another running back, but wait for round 8. We'll get to that in a second. Tom Brady and his torn MCL, or at least repaired MCL, we think, at the 7-11 tonight, and Logan Thomas is the second of the back-to-back selections at tight end for Scott Barrett from Fantasy Points as he goes Dallas Goedert and Logan Thomas. All right, so you look at round 7 here, Farrell. Jerry Jeudy's an interesting cat. One of the stories that we have seen in the Football Guys Players Championship over the last week, we're starting to see more drafts where Jeudy is being selected over Courtland Sutton. This was not happening back in January. It wasn't happening back in March. Quite frankly, it wasn't happening in June. It's starting to happen now. Jeudy over Courtland Sutton. Now, it happens again tonight where the sophomore out of Alabama gets selected over Courtland Sutton. Farrell, right now, as far as ADP goes, in the FFPC Slim Best Balls, these guys are back-to-back. Sutton is still ahead on average, but it is razor-thin now. Wide receiver 31 for Sutton, wide receiver 32 for Jerry Jeudy, 705 and 706 on average, according to FantasyMojo.com. Which guy do you like better there for a Broncos receiver? Are you betting on Jeudy or Courtland Sutton coming off the ACL ligament tear?
It's a tough call. I think the answer is to go with whichever of these players you can get at the better bargain. And I'm surprised that that's become Sutton, because Sutton has a bigger resume, even though Jeudy has the recency bias. But we're sitting in a situation where we're going to see these guys go so close in the draft. Unless you're sitting at the end, you can't get both of them. But in this format, that would have been a wonderful idea.
Let's move on to the 8th round here. After Logan Thomas, Jalen Hurts is Scott Barrett's first quarterback off the board, or his first quarterback. He is the 10th quarterback off the board. Tyler Higbee, number 1 tight end for Petrie and Larson there. Raheem Mostert. And I know that the YouTube chat was commenting on this. Leone goes 0 RB, and then he takes 2 of the oldest running backs around in Mike Davis and Raheem Mostert to form his backfield. Now, you could do worse than that if you're going to go 0 RB. So the running back 31 tonight, Raheem Mostert, he is also the 803, and he's going to establish the runs, Michael Leone. Damian Harris, a guy who has been rising in ADP, obviously. He goes to Robert Trends here at the 804, followed by Courtland Sutton. Zach Moss off the board as the number 3 running back to Kahn and Laser, followed by Brandon Cooks, the number 4 receiver for Rebar. Mike Gesicki, Antonio Brown, and Evan Ingram, 3 veterans there. Gesicki off the board to Mark and Amy Palmer. Antonio Brown goes to Jason Petropoulos from Brodo. That's his number 3 receiver. Evan Ingram, the number 1 tight end drafted by Mike Stanowski. Aaron Rodgers goes off the board as quarterback 11 tonight, and then Michael Gallup with the final pick of the 8th round. Farrell, listen, I'm a guy from Wisconsin here. I think I'm contractually obligated to bring you Aaron Rodgers news. I don't know if you saw this random person on Facebook saying that her friend works for a cleaning company and is scheduled to do a deep clean on Aaron Rodgers' house. Remember, Packers training camp begins 8 days from today perhaps Aaron Rodgers is planning on reporting. I have been bullish on him being the week one starter all along. It's starting more and more to look like, if you read between the lines here, that Aaron Rodgers is going to be there for the start of training camp. And if that is the case, him at quarterback 11 to me still represents a significant value right now in drafts.
No kidding, the steal of the draft, and guys that are wise to do it. And it makes sense. The guy's a competitor. He's a little closed-mouthed, he's a little erratic, and a little mysterious, but that appears to be part of it could be part of his long-term retirement plan, making himself a continual, interesting individual. But, I could go on and on about things that I've seen and heard about Rodgers, and all of them point to one thing. He wants to compete, and he's not going to let down his teammates, Packers fans, fans that he has all around the country. He'll open the season for the Packers under center.
Another thing that's interesting about Aaron Rodgers, which I guess a lot of people know, he is actually a part owner of the Milwaukee Bucks, and obviously the Bucks marching their way to an NBA Finals championship right now. I have a buddy who rented a bus, as I live in the shadows of Lambeau Field, rented a big bus to bring a bunch of people down to Fiserv Forum in Milwaukee. It's about a 2-hour drive from where I'm at. And he said, "You got to come, Balky. You got to come." And I said, "I'm doing Pros versus Joes tomorrow, man. There's no way I can do it. I can't make it." And he's still trying to get the Dizzle to make a comeback to Pros versus Joes to co-host with you tomorrow. I don't think that's going to happen. But I'll tell you this: if it doesn't happen, and the game is scheduled for 9:00 Eastern time tomorrow, it'll probably end about 11:30. Well, we're going on the air until midnight tomorrow. So that last half hour, I apologize in advance, listeners. If the Bucks win, I'm going to be a sloppy pile, and you're not going to want to listen to the last 30 minutes of the program tomorrow. But I will be watching it as well as watching this draft unfold. Aaron Rodgers, people talk about him being, so cryptic, and so he's been tweeting about the Bucks. Farrell, he's hashtagging nothing on Twitter right now. He's just putting out tweets and then putting a hashtag with nothing behind it. You cannot get any more cryptic than that. So Aaron Rodgers, congratulations. You win the Cryptic Award, and maybe you'll help Jeremy Brown win the FFPC Main Event Free Entry Award in this league. Moving on until to the 9th round here tonight. We see a lot of receivers go off the board here. Jarvis Landry, a guy I like quite a bit. Jay Flake grabs him at the 901, followed by Mike Williams, who we know is playing the Michael Thomas role in the Saints offense that is going to be installed with the Los Angeles Chargers this year. Mike Williams to Jeremy Brown at the 902. Marquise Brown to Mike Stanowski. Will Fuller to Jason Petropoulos. Then we see Melvin Gordon go at the 905 tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, that is 4 full rounds after Javonte Williams. Interesting separation there from the Pros with Joes. Curtis Samuel to Rich Rebar there. That is his number 5 receiver, followed by Laviska Shenault out of Colorado, now in Jacksonville. He is the number 4 receiver for Kahn and Laser. They're the former world champs. Ryan Tannehill to Brian Drake and Dwayne McFarland as their number 1 quarterback. Michael Pittman, the number 3 receiver, drafted by Robert Trentz tonight there. We'll talk about him in a little bit. Joe Burrow is going to be starting at quarterback for Michael Leone. James Conner, the number 3 running back for Petrie and Larson. Petrie and Larson going Austin Eckler, Antonio Gibson to start things off. They don't go back to the running back well until round 9, where they get James Conner. And then Robert Tonyan, Aaron Rodgers' tight end. He is the 3rd tight end drafted by Scott Barrett. Scott Barrett becoming the first player tonight to have 3 tight ends on his team after already selecting Dallas Goedert and Logan Thomas. He gets Robert Tonyan. Farrell, what's going on with Michael Pittman, man? He falls again tonight. He goes in the 9th round. Wide receiver 47. I know you love him quite a bit. I don't know if there's – and by the way, it's not like he fell that much. He goes normally at wide receiver 46 in the 10th round. But this is a player who could be the number 1 receiver in this offense with Carson Wentz this year. Are people still believing in T.Y. Hilton? Are they believing in Paris Campbell? I don't understand why Pittman, a guy that they selected early in the 2nd round last year, and a guy who flashed last year, is going so late.
I think they don't believe in Carson Wentz, which is a big, big mistake, because that means that they don't understand what was happening at Philadelphia last year. It was an absolute disaster with this ball club, from the coaching staff situation, from the offensive line, which disappeared very quickly throughout the season. Carson Wentz, through 12 games, Balky, 50-plus sacks last year. Through 12 games. That's one of the reasons that Jalen Hurts looks so productive is that he seemed to separate himself and star when the offense broke down there at Philadelphia, and it broke down quite often, and Hurts would create. And some of the drafters, I think, when they look at that, they could be putting a little bit too much emphasis on Hurts in these drafts because of that. But the question is about Pittman. Now, Pittman finished the year strong, 5 for 90 and a touchdown. That's the kind of production that we should regularly and steadily expect from this player. And, when a player usually comes up and to become a number one target for a team, he has a supporting cast around him that might be a little younger, that might be a little inexperienced. T.Y. Hilton signs his free agent deal after many, many overtures from teams, stays with the Colts. The Colts also have Paris Campbell to get essentially his first healthy opportunity to be an excellent player. And the Colts have running backs. Everybody knows who they are. I don't have to list them. And all of them are very good. And all of them can catch the ball. There's a lot of tools on this team for this quarterback. And there's a lot. Defenses cannot focus on Pittman and ruin his opportunities. Pittman's going to have a very, very good year as part of the squad, and he's going to be the lead guy. So that is, for me, as far as receiver-wise is concerned, this is the steal of this draft so far.
Yeah, it's a great pick. It's a great pick for sure in a round where a lot of receivers went off the board. We see a lot more color here in the 10th round, the color branching off like timelines in Loki here in the 10th round as we see running backs, receivers, tight ends, quarterbacks, everybody going in the 10th. Leonard Fournette leads it off for Scott Barrett as his number 4 running back. Kenyon Drake right after that to Petrie and Larson. Jaylen Waddle, the rookie receiver out of Miami, to Michael Leone. Matt Ryan is going to be backing up Justin Herbert for Robert Trends. Then we see Jamal Williams, who's backing up DeAndre Swift in real life in Detroit. He is going to be the number 3 running back for Brian Drake and Dwayne McFarland. Adam Troutman backing up Darren Waller for Con and Laser. And then you see Tony Pollard going off the board. This is another example of drafting other people's handcuffs. Rich Rebar does not allow Tony Pollard to get back to Jeremy Brown in the 10th round. He drafts him as his number 3 running back after starting off his draft with Barkley and Aaron Jones. David Johnson is the number 4 running back off the board to Team 5. That's Mark and Amy Palmer. Corey Davis, the new New York Jet, to Jason Petropoulos, followed by Irv Smith, the second tight end drafted by Mike Stanowski from the 3-hole. Russell Gage and Ronald Jones complete the 10th round. Brown takes Gage. Ronald Jones, the number 3 running back for Jay Flake. Again, a player who drafted running back with their first 2 picks and then ignore the position until the 10th round. He gets Ronald Jones as his number 3 as running back 41 in this draft. You could do a lot worse there. Farrell, one player I want to talk about here, and it's a player that I don't know if I brought up on the HSFF Hour too much, but it's Jaylen Waddle. Now, this is a player that I never really was all that enraptured with when he was at Alabama. Now, obviously, he got hurt, right? And when all the eyes were on college football, he wasn't necessarily playing until that championship game. I was surprised that I know all the mocks said he would go as a top 10 pick. I was still surprised to see him go in the top 10. What am I missing on Jaylen Waddle? Because even for Dynasty, I wasn't necessarily on board. Now, Michael Leone is way smarter about fantasy football than I'll ever be, but he takes Waddle here in round 10 at wide receiver 48. Can you sell me on Waddle, or are you also down on him?
Not down on him, but I'm hesitant. And this is where the player should go when you have questions about him. But it is a significant upside in a situation where he has experience or at least relationship with the quarterback. He's going to be in a situation very, very comfortable for him. They're going to move him. In other words, he's going to be where the defense ain't. And that's a very good thing for a receiver in this type of offense. I like the fact that the quarterback can extend the play with his legs, and the receiver is the best part about him is his ability to get open and is his ability to stick on his routes until he needs to create. So I think this is a player, and I'm going to look at this schedule and realize again that this is a 17-week season. This rookie player now, I don't have to qualify for my division playoffs in week 11. This rookie player is going to have a better second half of the season than he has in the first. So I think it's a very legitimate pick right here.
Moving on here, and I want to, as I adjust the draft board from everybody watching us on YouTube. By the way, right now, if you want to see this draft, because we've been talking about it, if you want to watch the draft unfold, we have it live on YouTube.com/High Stakes Fantasy Football right now, so you can actually see the draft grid and see the picks that are unfolding as we talk about them right now. We left off in the 10th round here. Let's kick things off and go back to the 10th round, or back to the 11th round here, with a player that is another backup. Latavius Murray goes off the board here to Jay Flake to kick things off in the 11th. Jonnu Smith is the number 1 tight end for Jeremy Brown for Dynasty Trade HQ podcast. Mecole Hardman is going to be the number 4 receiver, drafted by Mike Stanowski. Elijah Moore, the rookie from New York, to Jason Petropoulos as his number 6 wideout. Pair of tight ends after that, Hunter Henry backing up Mike Gesicki for Markanemi Palmer. And then you have Gerald Everett off the board to Rich Rebar as his number 2 tight end. Darnell Mooney, a guy who really got a lot of hype last offseason. He's getting a lot of hype this offseason. And he goes to Jason Kahn and Aaron Laser, the former world champs, there in the 11th round. Devontae Parker and Henry Ruggs after that. Parker to Drake, Ruggs to Trends. A pair of quarterbacks here. Trey Lance to Michael Leone, and then Trevor Lawrence off the board to FPI. T.Y. Hilton, as we were talking about him before when we were talking about the Pittman selection, T.Y. Hilton goes to Scott Barrett here in the 11th round. Farrell, just looking here at Michael Leone's team, a lot of Niners on this squad. And based on the YouTube chat, it sounds like he is high on the Niners this year. One of the travesties is the Pros vs. Joes has gotten so big, I can't read everybody's articles. I can't listen to everybody's podcasts. I can't watch everybody's YouTube channel, so I got to kind of rely on everybody else to fill in the cracks here. And Leone takes a 49er in George Kittle in round 2. He takes another 49er in Deebo Samuel in round 7. He takes another 49er right away in round 8, Raheem Mostert, and then he grabs Trey Lance, the quarterback, who may or may not be starting earlier than we think, in round 11. What do you make of loading up on 49er skill position players this year, regardless of format? I know that their over-under total is like 10.5, I want to say. So it sounds like they're in for a bounce back. What about fantasy-wise? Are you down with a lot of the Niners this year?
Anytime a team has question marks at quarterback in expectations of what they're going to do, I'm going to look away from the wide receivers. Now Deebo Samuel had the worst luck of any player in the NFL last year. He missed a lot of time. We could take his season away and say that season you shouldn't even look at that when you evaluate his potential. Everyone knows that knows me. He knows how I feel about Mostert, and the question there is, can he, of course, remain healthy? I think he can, and in a situation where Sermon and Elijah Mitchell, a three-headed committee that will get 500 carries. We talked about it on the show last night. I think Trey Lance is Taysom Hill this season, so I don't believe he's got much value for that pick. This was a 6-10 football team last year that's playing in a division where everybody is continuing to get better, especially Arizona on the defensive side of the ball, especially Seattle that looks like it's bringing its team together with a new offensive coordinator. I like the under on the wins for this team. And they'll be very, very fantasy relevant. I like some of them, but not all of them.
Curtin Reeve is saying in the BTR chat right now, I got to monitor 2 chat rooms right now. I don't know how I'm going to watch this Bucs game tomorrow, by the way, with all this stuff going on. It's going to be crazy. Curtin Reeve says that San Francisco has a preseason top 3 schedule for quarterback, running back, and receiver, according to FF Toolbox. FF Toolbox, by the way, was launched by a young man. Well, he's not young anymore, but he was at the time, of graduate of the University of Wisconsin Oshkosh, the same college that both I and Dizzle graduated from. Dizzle probably doesn't want me saying that, but I'm going to say it anyway. So a lot of fantasy football brilliance coming out of the UW Oshkosh, a team that, by the way, lost the D3 national football title a couple of years ago, which I watched that game while I was broadcasting the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. Let me tell you, very depressing to do, Farrell, when they lost that game to Mount Union.
They were robbed.
By the way,
they were robbed.
Well, I don't know if they were robbed, but Mount Union made a lot of great plays at the end, and UW Oshkosh did not. Mm-hmm. It's just one of those things that happens. It is what it is, and I'm over it. By the way, if you're wondering why I was broadcasting this show on a Friday night, this show normally airs Friday nights at 10/9 Central. You can also access, in case you can't make that, I mean, Friday night, a lot of people got stuff going on, whatever. But if you can't make it live and hang out with the high-stakes players in the chat room, full on-demand streaming is always available for listening anytime via hsffhour.com, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Audible, Google Podcasts, Amazon Alexa, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spreaker, plenty of others on your iPhone or Android device as well. We do this show every Friday night. We always have a high-stakes player on, pick his or her brain, and it's a lot of stuff. Like, we had a B-Bag Batoba, the back-to-back winner of the Football Guys Players Championship, a couple of weeks before he won his first one. And the next time we interviewed him, he had 2 six-figure prizes under his belt. It was pretty crazy. So stuff like that on. We've had Sharkandrick West, the former Chiefs running back. A lot of the pros in the FFPC Pros versus Joes have also been on this program before, too. So if you like what you're hearing, we're going to have another great guest this Friday night, and we'll continue that throughout the fantasy football season. We're going to continue our analysis throughout the remainder of this draft. I believe we left off in the 12th round. The 1201 tonight goes to Cole Beasley. He is the choice for Scott Barrett from Fantasy Points in the 1201. Darrell Henderson and A.J. Dillon, back-to-back running backs here in the second round to FPI, and then Michael Leone. Jared Cook is the second tight end drafted by Robert Trent. Then you have Baker Mayfield backing up Ryan Tannehill for Drake and McFarland. Rashad Bateman, the rookie receiver out of Minnesota. He is now a member of the Draft Head Junkies. That is Jason Kahn and Aaron Lacer. Justin Fields is going to be backing up Lamar Jackson, so you're looking at some pretty young, dynamic quarterbacks there for Rich Rebar from Sharp Football Analysis. Is that Sharp Football Analysis? I mean, we would love to talk to Rich about plenty of his picks tonight. Hopefully he can get a chance to call in before we sign off at in about an hour or so. Devin Singletary off the board here after that, followed by Gus Edwards to Jason Petropoulos, Jalen Reagor, the second-year receiver from Philadelphia, to Mike Stanowski, and then Gabriel Davis from Buffalo. He goes to Jeremy Brown. Alexander Madison off the board to Jay Flake with the final pick of the 12th round. That is what we're looking at here. And I'll say this, Farrell, I'll just bring this up right now. Gabriel Davis is a player I don't necessarily know if I was on too much. Obviously with Cole Beasley there and Stephon Diggs getting paid crazy money, they bring in Emmanuel Sanders. I actually traded him away in a couple of my dynasty leagues. What do you make of Gabriel Davis for redraft purposes this year?
For redraft purposes, I like him, but I don't like him as much as what Emmanuel Sanders, after Emmanuel Sanders was signed. Now we've got this commentary that Beasley may be leaving, or Beasley may have wore out his welcome here. But Sanders speaks to the fact that they're not ready for Davis to step up in as big a role as I think he could fulfill. We promoted that player last year as a bye-week fill-in, and he delivered very, very well for teams that listen to us. I think Davis is 1 year away because of the Sanders acquisition. And, the coaching staff up there, they've wanted Sanders for a long time, and they're going to use him. So Davis should drop significantly as we get closer to the season, and more likely we'll see him. We may see owners get frustrated, and we'll see him again on the waiver wire. It's a long season, and be determined as what his role and contribution will be.
The other pick I wanted to discuss with you in the 12th round was, the Bills' backfield. You like Zach Moss better than Devin Singletary, right? And by the way, before you answer that, I'll tell you that Singletary went in the 12th round tonight. Zach Moss, he went all the way up in the 8th round. The Bills running back of your choice, are you waiting on whoever goes last, or are you betting on Moss?
In this format, I would probably I would probably want to wait for Singletary. However, both players, their situation with scoring the ball inside the 10-yard line becomes very, very difficult because of the quarterback. And I don't see anything changing there. I also see that they have receivers that can get open around the goal line. And so there's no problem with either of these running backs except they don't score the football enough. And I like Singletary's pass-catching skills. Both of them are good picks here, especially if you believe that Moss is going to continue to blossom. Now, he's had some injury situations that go, back to college that have plagued him throughout his career. I don't know if Singletary would be a go-to every down running back. He's a good complementary player, has a role in this format. For running backs in the 8th through 12th round, I'm probably looking somewhere else unless I'm going unless I've already got some Bills players or perhaps that wonderful Diggs and quarterback stack there.
I do want to get back into the analysis of the 13th round here, ladies and gentlemen. But before I do want to go back out to the phone lines here and take a call from the 347. You are on the air with Farrell Elliott and Eric Balkman here on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. Who do we have the pleasure of speaking with now?
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me. This is Jason Petropoulos of Team 4.
Well, not only Team 4, but sell yourself, Jason. Brodo Fantasy Football, baby. Home of you guys got a brand new app. The podcast is killing it. You're adding new talent. You're crushing it over at Brodo right now, man.
I mean, I just assumed you were going to do the promo for me, so I just passed it off to you. But, yeah, the Fantasy Football by Brodo app on all app stores, it is everything you need in an app. And like you guys said, we have a team of writers, and we're releasing content every day. We're doing a lot of stuff over there.
You are doing a lot of stuff in this draft, my friend. Did you plan on Travis Kelce being there for you at the 104 tonight? I mean, that's a little bit later than he normally goes in this format.
Yeah, I was ecstatic to see Kelce fall to me. The best success I've had in FFPC drafts are where I took tight ends early. So I'm very happy to have Kelce there at 4.
I like what you're doing here with these wide receivers. It's very impressive, this middle group of wide receivers. And they're all made for this format. And I'm curious if you're going to add any more Jets.
Yeah, maybe Zach Wilson to tie it all up. Listen, people forget Edie Westbrook and Chris Conley that year where they were both drafted late in drafts. In best ball, they combined to be a wide receiver 1. People underestimate that the just teams in the late rounds of just grabbing those top 2 receivers on teams people don't like. So I'm happy to have all of the Jets receivers. One of them will pop off every week, hopefully.
Well, you've got one that's going to pop off more often, and he's from Kentucky, and I'm waiting to see if you're going to put him on your rosters in the later rounds. So that's all the hint I can give you on that.
If you're talking about Denzel Mims, I think he's off the board.
Nope, not Denzel Mims.
Keep digging. Crowder, he's already on my team.
Jameson Crowder, not from Kentucky, but went to the Derby in 2018, I think. I saw him there in 18. That's not
you
him
saw
either.
Jameson Crowder at the Kentucky Derby?
Oh, yeah, you see all the guys at the Kentucky Derby. It's a great crowd. Derby.
I got to get down
there. But
there's
another Jet receiver there just waiting to deliver this team the final knockout blow to deliver this team the championship, and I just not finding him.
Hey, much as I love to talk about New York Jets receivers from Kentucky, Jason, I do want to ask you about DeAndre Swift, because we've heard mixed reports on, from the coaches there, with, Jamal Williams being the 1B to DeAndre Swift's 1A. You obviously are a believer in DeAndre Swift to make him your choice at the 304 tonight. How do you break down that Lions backfield? Is Williams going to have a similar role that he did in the last couple of years in Green Bay, or is it going to be something more in Detroit?
Yeah, before I answer that, let me draft Rashad Perriman here in the former Jet.
There you go.
That's not it. That's not it.
But really, at running back 17, I thought that the upside there compared to the rest of the running backs in the draft room. I didn't want to pass it up there in the third round because I felt that if I wasn't taking Swift there, then my first running back was going to be a Myles Gaskin in round 6.
You had the choice between Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp as far as Rams receivers go in the 4th round. Now you went with Woods, and I think that the Kupp supporters, or the athletic supporters, as it were, since his last name is Kupp, would say that, hey, Cooper Kupp's going to have a big 2021 because he just was down in touchdowns last year. And Robert Woods, obviously, I don't know exactly how many touchdowns he had. I don't think it was double digits, but it was close. You still went with Woods. Now he's got the new quarterback in Stafford. Is there a chasm between Woods and Kupp, or is it fairly close for you?
Yeah, it's definitely fairly close. I understand if someone takes Kupp ahead of Woods. At Brodo, we call Robert Woods the ice cream sandwich because he's just an underrated star that people just forget about, and he always produces. You always love the ice cream sandwich, even though you're not going. So I was just happy to grab Woods there. To have Justin Jefferson as my first wide receiver, and I knew late I was going to try to grab some guys with a spike upside like Will Fuller. I just knew that having a wide receiver too who was a bit more consistent would help me out more, and that's why I leaned towards Woods.
I think that's a great choice.
We're coming up. You only have one pick left, Jason, and we'll get into your team analysis here shortly. But based on what you expected to happen tonight versus what actually happened tonight, how do you rate your team? Do you feel like I did the best I could? It's a little shaky. Do you feel really confident with it? How do you feel about your team competing for this 2022 FFPC main event squad?
I don't want to sound too cocky, but I'm giving myself an A+. I'm very happy with the way it's coming out.
There you go.
I feel like I'm getting values everywhere. Gentlemen.
Farrell loves your receivers for sure. I like the Gus Edwards pick in 12. Philip Lindsay was the guy I was really regretting not picking up in my earlier drafts this season. And now that I'm getting him, now I'm starting to have buyer's remorse a little bit. But I still think that's a solid pick for you in round 13 as well. Before we let you go, Jason, I want you kind of already did already, promoting the new Brodo app. Obviously, you're doing a lot of stuff with rankings for Fantasy Pros again this year. But talk a little bit about what you have coming up down the pike for Brodo Fantasy. And we obviously all follow you on Twitter at BRotoFF, Jason, and at Brodo Fantasy as well.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk about this app a little bit. If you go on Fantasy Football by Brodo on the App Store or the Google Play Store, it has everything you need. We have player cards, which have the combine numbers in the front and all of the statistics that we thought were most helpful on the back. We have sortable statistics in the palm of your hand. We have player comps, a draft tool where you can compare players back and forth. We have ADP. Literally anything you think you need for fantasy football is on this app. We're going to be pumping out content every day. In the month of August, we do the Heat Wave, which is where we release a 20 to 30-minute preview of every single team heading into the season. So we're going to keep pumping out content. That's at Brodo Fantasy on Twitter and the Fantasy Football by Brodo app. Thank you guys for having me. It's been a blast.
Jason, before
real quick,
you go,
listen. Okay, Farrell, go ahead and ask your question. No, Farrell, you go ahead and ask your question. Jason, I lied. There's one other question I've been meaning to ask you this whole interview, and I forgot about it. So, Farrell, you go, and then I got one more.
Well, I only had one self-serving comment. Is we want you to come to Kentucky and play. We're going to put you in a room of potential customers that you've never met. And, something about the heat wave, if, Balky's been here every year, he'll tell you we got a heat wave of our own waiting for you. And when you get down here, we're going to help you find that right jet receiver.
Are we talking Keelan Cole? Is that the?
There we go. We finally.
There you go. I knew you knew it
Evan.
the whole time. You just didn't want to say it, but yeah, that's who it was. Jason, something that you guys have developed, and I don't know if it was you or Tim or Mike or whoever came up with it. Tell the listeners a little bit about true throw value and why Ryan Tannehill is like the god of it.
Oh yeah, I always love to talk about Ryan Tannehill. True throw value is a statistic we came up with, honestly, because a guy I drafted today, Corey Davis, was always so hyped up and never lived up to the hype. So I thought to myself, what's a statistic that could show that the targets he's getting from Marcus Mariota aren't as valuable as the targets he's getting, let's say, a wide receiver on the Saints aren't as valuable from Drew Brees, right? So that's what true throw value tries to decide. It's sort of a adjusted fantasy points per attempt, where we want to see how many points these quarterbacks are getting every time they drop back, and how it translates to the wide receivers. So then we take the quarterback's number, apply it to the wide receiver, and it tells you how many points you should expect from this wide receiver when he's getting this many targets from this quarterback. And we find it to be very helpful. And Ryan Tannehill, it's the reason why A.J. Brown is so good on limited targets, because Ryan Tannehill is super efficient, and A.J. Brown is able to do a lot with a little because Ryan Tannehill is throwing him the ball.
If you want more great analysis on not only true throw value, but everything fantasy football, first of all, download the Brodo Fantasy Football app, number one. Follow Jason on Twitter at BRotoFFJason, and follow Brodo Fantasy on Twitter at Brodo Fantasy. Jason, congratulations on a very successful draft. I think you are going to be in the thick of it when it comes to who wins this 2022 FFPC main event squad. We will all continue to listen to the Brodo Fantasy Football podcast that you guys keep putting out. Keep up the great work, man, and always good to talk to you, dude.
Appreciate it. Thank you guys for having me. It was a blast. I hope that everything you said about my team doing well comes true.
Yeah, we do too. We do too, man. Go Team Petropoulos. Jason Petropoulos joining the show tonight from Brodo Fantasy Football as he is drafting from the number 4 spot tonight, and we'll get into his team analysis here shortly. Farrell, we'll try to. I'll go pick by pick. The draft actually just ended, and I believe we left off in the 13th round. So I'll at least get to the 13th round. We'll talk a little bit about the picks here as much as we can in the next 10 minutes before we either take another phone call or if we start switching to our team analysis on this. Rob Gronkowski, 1301, followed by your boy Nelson Aguilar. Just to clarify, Aguilar is the Patriots receiver you're drafting this year, right?
Probably not. There isn't a Patriot receiver I'm drafting this year.
But I guess I'm saying if there was, that's the one you like best, right?
Well, sure. Yeah, he's the.
Well, he's still not going to find his way on your team.
Yeah, it's. I just cannot count on him to catch the ball. He can get open. He can make circus catches. He can be very, very fascinating as a player and run big plays. Hey, you know what? If we're in this format, I'm drafting him. But, he's stuck in the 15th round of the redrafts for a reason.
Yes. No, you're right. I get it. I don't know if this is the same with you, but you had that situation. I think it was in Philadelphia a couple of years ago where there was the burning building, and they had to to throw kids out of the building, and the guy was catching them. And he was a total hero. I mean, this is something that he is going to remember for the rest of his life. He's a hero in Philadelphia. And they were interviewing him on live TV, and he said, yeah, I was catching the kids, unlike Aguilar, which is just so hilarious that these, Philly fans, I was actually, all right, so I'm going to say this right now. I was in church on Sunday, and there was the sermon from the pastor was all about loving your neighbor and judging and everything like that. And he cited Philadelphia in a recent study about the most hostile place to live in the United States. Ironically, it was the city of brotherly love, Philadelphia, the most hostile place to live. Whether it's people walking down the street, whether it's their fans filling up the Vet or any of the stadiums they have there, the Spectrum. I think I'm dating myself here. I don't think the Spectrum or the Vet are the Link, right? It's the Link now. It's a hostile place to live, and they're taking shots at their sports heroes as they're catching babies coming out of burning buildings. You can't make that up. Such good stuff there out of Philadelphia. Anyway, Paris Campbell off the board at the 1303 to Mike Stanowski. Philip Lindsay, we talked about him. Zach Ertz off the board after that to the he is the number 3 tight end drafted by Mark and Amy Palmer. Naheem Hines, Blake Jarwin, Ryan Fitzpatrick, the 3rd quarterback selected by Brian Drake and Dwayne McFarland. All receivers the rest of the way in the 13th. Emmanuel Sanders, Rondale Moore, Marvin Jones, and another receiver from the Patriots, Jacoby Myers. We talked a little bit about him last night. Farrell, I don't know, I can't remember if Jared Smola or Matt Schauf are drafting in pros versus Joes this year. I know they have in the past. But I know they are high. Well, I shouldn't say high. I know they like Marvin Jones this year in Jacksonville. Now, Marvin Jones joins a squad with a new quarterback in Trevor Lawrence, but he also joins a squad that has already taken Laviska Shenault early in the draft last year, and they have DJ Chark, a guy who's really come on. What do you make of Marvin Jones signing that free agent deal in Jacksonville? Is he a steal here in the 13th round for Petrie and Larson? I drafted him, I think, in the Scott Fish Bowl, and it's the only league I've drafted him in so far, and I'm not sure what to think of him yet. Can you help me try to understand Marvin Jones for the 2021 season?
Everyone has hesitancy about Marvin Jones because they talk about a lot of competition there. But Marvin Jones is the standard-bearer veteran receiver who's going to help that wide receiver room. He's going to help them all be better, including Etienne. And he's going to be a focal point for this quarterback. I love the fact that it's a rookie quarterback throwing the ball to Marvin Jones. If you change the equation, I wouldn't, if there was a veteran quarterback there, I would say that Marvin's opportunities might be a little less. But, yeah, you're going to lean on Marvin Jones. He does everything right as a wide receiver. He can't seem to get on a winning team, and now he's got on a team that won 2 games last year. But Marvin Jones, 9 touchdowns in 2020. Marvin Jones, 9 touchdowns in 2019. He'll find the end zone. He'll make the catch. This is a real receiver. This is a receiver that the Patriots should have signed.
I want to go back out to the phone lines and welcome in a very special guest, a guy we had on these airwaves not just a few weeks ago, the Paradox himself, a guy who drafted tonight from the number 3 spot. It is Mike Stanowski. Mike, welcome back to the program. How do you think you did tonight, dude?
Hey, thanks, guys. Good to be here. Promised to give you guys a call back, so definitely wanted to make good on the promise here. It took a lot of twists and turns today. But yeah, absolutely. This one took a lot of twists and turns. So I think in terms of roster construction, I took a lot of swings, and I told you guys when I came on I wanted to finish first or last, and it seems like to me this team has a chance to do that.
You were on your way, buddy, to finishing first here, and I don't know, what were you thinking when you went with Josh Jacobs? That's the question I've been wanting to ask all night, Balky. What made you take Josh Jacobs here?
Yeah, I knew that was a polarizing pick, and originally I came into the draft kind of with my plan set out. I anticipated getting Kelsey, but when Cook fell to me, he was actually the only running back I was going to take over Kelsey. So that threw a curveball right away. I was thrilled to see Chubb there. I love Nick Chubb this year. Same thing with Hilaire. I'll get to the Josh Jacobs, but. Yeah, in Cooper Kupp, I could see him moving up into that wide receiver 1 tier this year. And originally I did plan to take another receiver there, but when Jacobs fell, to me again, like his touches, his workload, I'm not terribly worried about Drake. And I thought of, well, if I do this, it's going to be tough sledding. I'm going to have to make some tough decisions later on. But that also locked me into my roster construction of just having a really efficient backfield and just having 4 guys who are going to get touches, are going to get a workload. If they get injured, again, I'm going to lose anyway. So instead of using those late round flyers on running backs or even mid round, now I don't have to worry about running back the rest of the draft. So it might not be the most efficient pick, but I was comfortable going that route and just going 4 running backs.
It's go ahead, Balky.
No, I was just going to say, just breaking down your first 3 picks, not necessarily the players, but when you look at knowing, Mike, that you had the 3 pick, were you considering going 3 straight running backs to start off the draft, or is that something that just sort of presented itself based on, a lot of people going heavy running back early? Your first 3 picks, what was the thought process on going running back with all of them?
Yeah, I didn't necessarily have that as my number 1 choice. Like I said, I thought Kelsey and then a running back, and I kind of had my pool I was going to pick from. Again, I was thrilled to see Chubb there. And then when Hilaire fell to the third round, again, that's going to be a guy with high volume touches in the best offense in football, at least the top three best offense in football in his second year. Again, that was mostly a value play. The receiver I actually consider there was Keenan Allen. I'm really high on Keenan Allen this year. But yeah, again, just going with it, man, going with the flow and saying, well, the value, at least on my board, is falling to me. I've been in these positions before. Now I understand that, how the rest of the draft is going to fall. I definitely did not expect to add Jacobs right behind that, really. But, getting Cooper Kupp made me a little more comfortable doing that. And I felt comfortable enough digging deep on receiver and adding volume there that it kind of opened that play up for me.
Mike, I'm going to be honest with you. When I look at your tight ends, you took Evan Ingram in the 8th and Irv Smith in the 10th. I think there's a pretty good chance that Irv Smith actually outproduces Evan Ingram this year. Ingram's got to deal with not only the addition of Kyle Rudolph, but the addition of Kenny Golladay to that offense. And Irv Smith looked really good in the second half of the season last year. He could end up being your number one tight end on this squad.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm with you there. The Ingram pick, I definitely reached a bit there, and that was, again, kind of reading what was going on behind me, right? So Jeremy did not have a tight end quite yet. I do think Ingram might be a little undervalued. Now, if we look at, again, the volume from last year, I do expect that offense to improve a bit, but yeah, Golladay is going to gobble up some volume. But when I reviewed targets, right, just purely tight end targets last year, Ingram was up there. He's over 100 targets, almost 110 targets last year. Even if that regresses down to, let's say, 70, 80 range, as long as he could stay somewhat efficient and give me enough good games, I kind of look at him as, if I'm not going to go with that top tier, I'm going to go back to Evan Ingram, right? And it, thinking about like Dallas Goedert, for example, people are super high on Goddard, but when you look at the body of work with Jalen Hurts, right, who's going to be thrown to him, again, looking at those guys a little bit above him, I just thought he was being, even despite the concerns, I thought he was being a little undervalued given the volume he's had and given his pedigree, right, his draft pedigree, his pedigree over time on the Giants. I don't see him completely falling off. And again, I was thrilled to see Irv Smith fall to me too, because he's the upshot guy, right? He's the guy that I'm looking at. Like, if he pans out, bam, we're off to the races.
Mike, I want to talk about your 17th round pick here, Amari Rogers, real quick before we let you go. This is a player that the defending overall champion, co-champion, I should say, along with Biplab Mandel, but Hudson Kern-Reed was talking about him in the chat room tonight as we were talking about Aaron Rodgers. You talk about Amari Rogers, his rookie year. What are your expectations for him? Because he's not a player who always gets selected in the best ball slims. You get him in the second to last round here. What are your expectations for Amari Rogers, his rookie year in Green Bay?
There's a massively wide range to those outcomes, but just looking at him and kind of going a little bit of a different angle, right? His kind of mindset and his I think his mindset coming off the ACL injury and just reading about how he pressed himself. I know it's kind of a fringe angle, but if you look at the guys Aaron Rodgers tends to kind of to jive with, right? The hard workers, the guys who are going to bring it every day, learn the playbook, and get in his good graces. I think he has an upshot as a third-round pick. I think there's a massive upside there. He could be nothing. He could not even see the field this year. That is within his range of outcomes. But I do see a world where Amari Rogers is, at the end of the year, we're talking about him as one of the better receivers taken in the draft, right? And especially connecting him to his namesake, Aaron Rodgers, there's not much more upside than that to hit that late in the draft.
Listen, Mike, this was so much fun catching up with you again. Don't be a stranger. Obviously, we all follow you on Twitter at Mike Stanowski, and we wish you nothing but the best of luck as you try to win a 2022 FFPC main event team in this draft. Thanks so much for calling in again. Always a pleasure talking to you. Don't be a stranger. We'll talk to you again real soon, dude.
All right. Sounds good, fellas. Good catching up with you.
Thanks, Mike.
Mike Stanowski, ladies and gentlemen. And go ahead, Farrell.
Balky, man, I love Mike so much, and I think he's a great player. And I think that just reaching for one of my favorite Raiders got him off his game. That's that one player that you could take in the draft that you went away from. And I have concern about his tight ends, he deserved a better run. So with me saying that, he's likely to push out and win the thing. Have we got any incoming calls from the 216?
We absolutely do. From the shadows of LeBron James's championship banner that he helped hang for the Cavs, that I'm hoping Giannis Antetokounmpo can hang in the 414 in Milwaukee tomorrow night. Let's go to Team Shocker, the Draft Head Junkies. I don't know if we have Jason or Aaron. Who is it?
You got both of us. You got both, man.
Oh,
we just got done recording a podcast.
They share the same microphone and the same brain, Balky, so it's understandable you get both of them.
It's the hive mind.
Yes.
I'm listening.
It's the hive mind indeed. We have a whole hive on the line right tonight. So listen, guys, you guys are producing the podcast at Draft Head Junkie on Twitter. You guys are doing a great job tonight. You did a great job in the draft, or did you? How did you feel like you guys did from the 7th spot in FFPC Pros versus Joe's number 2?
Well, we had a couple strategies. We really wanted like a RB1. We thought we wouldn't have a shot at Waller, just seeing where he's been going in the top 5 already. But once we saw he was there, we couldn't pass on Waller, and then our first 3 picks, we have 3 guys who are going to catch 100 balls. That was just hard to pass up, and it came at the expense of running backs. So we'll see how that pans out. And then the way I look at our roster, go ahead, Balky.
No, Aaron, I was going to ask you, I want to break down your roster, obviously, and your philosophy. But based on Jason's response to that question, it sounds like you guys want to be elite, right? And to be elite, obviously targets, receptions help you. You guys also got elite at quarterback, and you cracked the quarterback cherry, as it were, with Patrick Mahomes in the 4th. Was that the plan going in, to draft quarterback early as well?
It was not, actually. And it was hilarious because the debate between Patrick Mahomes, Robert Woods, and Javonte Williams. And Robert Woods is the 3rd person, but it was a hard debate for us between Javonte Williams and Patrick Mahomes, just because we ignored the QB position so much. And we were hoping for like a Carson or Montgomery or Sanders, somebody to drop to us in the 4th, and they didn't. So that moved Javonte Williams up because we feel that he's going to be the starting running back in Denver. Melvin Gordon, I don't even think he can be on the roster. He could be in Atlanta for all we know, come the start of the season. So when we went Patrick Mahomes, we were like, okay. We looked at, we have an elite tight end. We could have a wide receiver one, or the number 1 wide receiver in Ridley, because Julio was gone. Keenan Allen is consistently a target hog, always going to be a wide receiver 1. And then we were like, epic, just add Patrick Mahomes, because you're getting the top QB. And then as the draft progressed, it played out perfectly because all the elite quarterbacks went, the top-tier quarterbacks went, and Javonte Williams still dropped it. So it worked out.
So congratulations on Williams, guys. Congratulations on Williams. Balky, I have watched these guys debate in a minute's time for years at live drafting. Their debates are legendary. They're quick. They're legendary. I'm not looking at the roster, guys. Are there any Buckeyes on it?
Shockingly, no Buckeyes. Not a single one.
There's no Buckeyes. So you don't get to do the little
Buckeyes,
cheer
no
for the Ohio State draft.
No, you guys screwed us with the slim draft, so we lost 10 rounds.
Jason, let me ask you this. Farrell was just talking about the debates. So Aaron said you were deciding between Patrick Mahomes, Robert Woods, and Javonte Williams in the 4th round. And Javonte Williams obviously makes it back to you in the 5th. You guys take him there. Now, I've been in these situations with, Leroy or the Dizzle, and the guy makes it back to us in the next round who we were debating in the previous round. And then it always kind of creeps in your mind, right? okay, should we take him here or should we wait another round and maybe draft somebody else? Was Javonte Williams the slam dunk for you in the 5th, or were you considering anybody else?
No, I mean that's all that was there. I mean, I guess Kareem Hunt maybe might have been the safer pick. You know, we definitely needed to go running back just because a Brown, because we ignored it. And Kareem Hunt, was a top 12 guy last year. I think he's super safe. I don't think he has the ceiling, that other running backs there did. So that was the decision. We went with Javonte Williams because we think he can take over that backfield. I think Denver can run the ball really well, and that's why we went with that pick over Hunt. And we thought we had a shot at a Hunt going back in the 6th.
Aaron, you guys are used to drafting a lot of 20-round 12-teamers, right, where you manage the teams throughout the year. How difficult was it for you guys to sort of make the adjustment to an 18-round slim where, the emphasis on getting every pick right is magnified a little bit, knowing that not only do you not have the 10 extra picks in a best ball or the 2 extra picks in a managed league, but you can't touch the waiver wire at all this year. How difficult of a transition was it for you?
Thankfully, Jason has prepped me, and we've done plenty of best ball drafts. So I have been knocking in and out with Jason and not with the Draft Head Junkies podcast, where we do have a 3-pack of the $125 best ball tournament. I have been tipping my toes into the $5 best ball, which gave me a little prep, but those are $5 best balls, so it's nowhere near the magnitude of something like this. So we're going against the analysts that we listen to. So we're trying to extend one day to be considered one of those analysts. So it's kind of like a little extra motivation that you had to be extra perfect. But
we've done it. We've done our due diligence this year.
Yeah, Jason, one thing, we always, the way we came up with our name of the Draft Head Junkies was our group chat, we always criticized Jason. We always used the Dave Chappelle meme of him sprinkling crack on a piece of toast. Because Jason was like a crackhead junkie when it comes to fantasy football drafts. Like the man has a draft going every single day, whether it be slow draft, fast draft, whatever. He is always drafting, and so that's where inspiration for the name of the Draft Head Junkies. And Jason has now infiltrated Jeff in my mind of drafting all the time now.
I sucked them in.
He sucked us in. We're screwed.
I lend them a little credit, so I pay for the teams, and then they just owe me. So then I'm like, all right.
I know. Jason always holds a debt over me. It will never go away. I did buy all the podcast equipment, though, so that's all on my time. Thanks for winning from last year.
Well, good for you. Yes, exactly. Well, listen, that's and now you're educating everybody, right? It's all about paying it forward to the fantasy football committee. Last question for you, Jason. When you look at all 18 of these picks, Mr. Khan, who is your favorite pick among the selections that you made tonight? Is it the aforementioned Mahomes, Javonte Williams? Who is it tonight that you're like, man, I'm so glad we got this guy?
Michael Carter.
Michael Carter in the 7th?
Michael Carter, Zach Moss. Well, the funny thing with Zach Moss and Laviska Shenault was that was the debate was, do we go Zach Moss or Laviska, and we got both of them, too.
Yeah. But I think Waller is going to be the guy that makes or breaks this team. If he's a 100-catch guy or improves upon last year, he's a steal in the first at a position that mostly is garbage. And so you can ride that to a win. That's
I would agree.
I want to invite everybody to not only follow Jason on Twitter at JCon216, to not only follow Aaron on Twitter at Aaron Laser, Leyser, but to follow the Draft Head Junkies podcast on Twitter at Draft Head Junkie. You guys are on Spotify. I know that. You're also on Podbean. Where else can people download your podcast from?
Those are really the only 2 places. I know you can do a Google search. We are working on fixing that because, like I said, I've used the Dave Chappelle stock image, and Apple and other podcast places are not happy with that image. So we can't. They won't upload
you don't
our
want
podcast.
to anchor them. Yeah.
So
listen, guys.
Yeah. So right now we got Jeff's sister, who has been voted one of the top artists in Cleveland 3 years in a row. She's working on a logo for us.
I certainly appreciate you guys coming on tonight. I congratulate you on a very good draft. I wish you nothing but the draft in all your leagues. And I look forward to hanging out with you in Louisville when I will be battling you, both of you or each of you, I don't know which yet, for players like Odell Beckham and Kareem Hunt going forward. It's going to be a lot of fun, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, definitely look forward to battling you, Balky. And Farrell, can't wait to get to Louisville for your great event you throw. And Vegas
See you
for your
soon, guys.
great event you throw, Balky.
That's right. Absolutely. Jason Kahn, Aaron Laser, ladies and gentlemen, the Draft Head Junkies podcast co-host. Make sure you check that out on Spotify. Make sure you check it out on Podbean as well. And, of course, as soon as Aaron Laser gets those royalties, or not royalties, but the copyrighted image off the podcast, you'll be able to check them out on many more places. But Spotify, listen, they'll accept everything. Good stuff from them. I always love talking to those guys. Man, now I'm all juiced up for Louisville. I can't wait to get there, hang out with those guys, have a bourbon or two. We, Farrell, I don't know if you, I can't remember if I told you this or not. God, this is, I am gonna, oh man, there was a Saturday morning draft like 3 years ago where Jason, myself, Travis Cox, and I can't remember the other guy. Why can I not remember the other guy? He ended up winning the league.
Probably.
And no, it wasn't Taylor Casey. It was somebody else who he's had a lot of success in Kentucky, and I cannot believe I'm forgetting his name. But he was the 12. He was the 12 pick. Khan was the 9. I was the 10. Travis Cox was the 11. Cox was the 10. I was the 11. And we called ourselves the Bourbon Turn, right? Because we were drafting it was like, the end of the round and then the start of the round, and every break, and sometimes not during a break, one of us would take turns and we go over and we grab some Woodford Reserve or whatever it was and bring it back to the table. And I got to tell you, 2.5 hours after doing the Bourbon Turn with those guys, I was good and ready to not draft the rest of the day. But I did. I fought through it, and it was one of the most fun drafts I've ever had at the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship in Louisville. It was so much fun with those guys. And I can't believe I'm forgetting the other guy's name. But I know it was Travis Cox, myself, and Jason Kahn. It was a lot of fun. In any event, and Kevin Williamson, by the way, in the BTR chat right now, good team name, the Bourbon Turn. I think that's what Jason Kahn changed his team name to for that draft that year.
That would definitely happen. I wonder if it was old Doc Hakey. Maybe it was Hakey with you.
No. It wasn't Brandon Hakey. I will figure it out. It was not Brandon Hakey.
As soon as we sign off tonight, we'll find out who it is.
We'll figure it out. And we'll get back to you for sure. All right, Farrell, we have about 15 minutes left in the program. We'll go rapid fire on this and try to talk about, maybe we'll talk about the teams that didn't call in tonight at least, and we'll kind of analyze how they did. And we'll start with Jay Flake from the one position, Dak Prescott, Daniel Jones at quarterback, running backs Christian McCaffrey, Joe Mixon, Ronald Jones, Latavius Murray, Alexander Madison, Rashad Penny, receivers DK Metcalf, Adam Thielen, Tyler Boyd, Michael Gallup, Jarvis Landry, Tyrell Williams, tight ends Noah Fant, Rob Gronkowski, Hayden Hurst, CJ Uzoma. You know what stands out to me about this squad, Farrell? This is the definition of, hey, I'm either playing for first or I'm not going to do so hot, because he went after a lot of players that need an injury to be worthwhile, right? Tyler Boyd in the 7th, Michael Gallup in the 8th. You look at Ronald Jones in the 10th, Latavius Murray and Alexander Madison back-to-back in the 11th and 12th. Even Rob Gronkowski and Hayden Hurst in the 13th and 14th. And Rashad Penny in the 17th. If the starters ahead of those guys go down, well, Jay Flake's got a contender to winning the whole thing, because he already has McCaffrey, Mixon, Metcalf, and Thielen, not to mention Prescott and Fant to start things off. So this is a team that, without injury, probably won't do so hot, but we've seen a lot of injuries in the past. This could be a contender.
Yeah, we have, and maybe he only has to have injury to one of those guys. But when you were going through those names, Balky, there's not a player on this team that I would argue about, nor is there a player on the team that I wouldn't roster. Oddly enough, Jarvis Landry might be my least favorite player as a producer on this roster. And I don't particularly agree with your assessment that these guys, I believe Hayden Hurst will be on the field with Pitts. I talk about that consistently. I think that Jones, a young running back that pushed 1,000 yards last year, is going to do that again and going to catch balls. They're not going to let 450 carries go to Leonard Fournette there. I very much like his quarterbacks. His draft started strong. I really like everything about this team. I like it a lot better than you do.
I think the other thing to keep in mind, too, and I can't remember who tweeted this out. It might have been Pete Overzet in the Fantasy Life newsletter. Pete Overzet, who, by the way, is in my Scott Fishbowl League, he said that he compared the stats between Ronald Jones and Leonard Fournette last year. And obviously, a lot of people are on Leonard Fournette. Don't forget about Ronald Jones because he had a better yards per carry. He had a lot, as far as the metrics go and the analytics go, Ronald Jones was actually the best running back in the backfield for Tampa last year. People forget about him because Leonard Fournette was so dominant in the playoffs, but Ronald Jones might be a guy that you want to target in your drafts going forward. We'll see how the rest of the PVJ guys handle it for the future. Now, Jeremy Brown, we have to talk about his team because he has drafted a league winner in the last 2 years in the Pros versus Joes. His quarterbacks, Matthew Stafford, Aaron Rodgers, Jared Goff, running backs, Ezekiel Elliott, Najee Harris, J.K. Dobbins, Trey Sermon, and Javian Hawkins. Receivers, Tyler Lockett, DJ Moore, Mike Williams, Russell Gage, Gabriel Davis, Nelson Aguilar, Sammy Watkins. Tight ends, Jonnu Smith and Dan Arnold. And Jimmy Graham. Jimmy Graham, wow, I didn't realize he got drafted tonight. So, Farrell, you look at this. I love the quarterbacks. I think Jared Goff is a little bit of overkill when you already have Stafford and Rodgers. The running backs, I think, are very, very good. The receivers seem to be a little bit of a question mark. Russell Gage is your number 4. I'm not sure how much I like that. And then waiting until round 11 to draft your first tight end and Jonnu Smith. Yeah, that could be okay, but Dan Arnold's your backup and the corpse of Jimmy Graham in the 17th round. Not sure I'm down with that. So this team, if the quarterbacks and running backs perform, it's going to be right there, but the receivers and the tight ends are the question marks for me.
I keep waiting for more explosive players in this format, and you can't argue about his receivers not being good players, and maybe one or two of them, but they all seem to fall into being alike and being what you can anticipate of their production. So, a young player like Kadarius Toney, Paris Campbell would have been a nice addition to a team like this. Somebody that we don't know what to expect, but there's tremendous opportunity to create something. And these wide receivers they'll be doing their job if they catch 60 balls, and I don't think 60 balls is going to win it for this draft.
We talked about Stanowski and Petropoulos' team, so let's move on to Mark and Amy Palmer here from the 5 spot. Josh Allen, Derek Carr, Jameis Winston at quarterback. Alvin Kamara, James Robinson, Melvin Gordon, David Johnson, Devin Singletary, Malcolm Brown at running back. Michael Thomas, Allen Robinson, Julio Jones, Juju Smith-Schuster, A.J. Green, Christian Kirk at receiver. Tight ends Mike Gesicki, Hunter Henry, and Zach Ertz. Farrell, I think if the Dizzle were on this podcast, he would say you can totally tell this is a high-stakes player drafting this team right now. Deep at quarterback, deep enough at tight end, a lot of talented receivers, and you're seeing a lot of running backs on this squad with some opportunity here that were undervalued by the other 11 drafters.
Tell me about this team makeup. Who are the drafters here?
You have Mark and Amy Palmer, FFPC main event competitors. I believe they've won several Football Guys Players Championship drafts, and I think a main event draft over the past couple of years as well. But you're looking at Kamara, Robinson, Gordon, David Johnson, Devin Singletary, Malcolm Brown at running back, and then the core of the receivers were Michael Thomas, A-Rob, Julio Jones, and Juju Smith-Schuster.
This is impressive because they look like they were very, very well prepared, and they did not drop off of their plan. It didn't depend on who became available to them. It looks to me like they stuck to plan, and they got players with high upside. I really like this team. I think this is the team that I like just as much as the number 1 team, and I love what they did at quarterback. That's my best aspect of this team.
Yeah, the quarterbacks look very strong, very, very strong. A team that we talked about throughout the podcast tonight, Rich Rebar from Sharp Football Analysis, Lamar Jackson, Justin Fields, Tua Tagovailoa, running backs Saquon Barkley, Aaron Jones, Tony Pollard, Naheem Hines, Tevin Coleman, Ramondre Stevenson, and Darrell Williams. Receivers, A.J. Brown, Robbie Anderson, Jerry Jeudy, Brandon Cooks, Curtis Samuel, Nico Collins, and then the tight ends, Mark Andrews and Gerald Everett. Farrell, no quarrel with the quarterbacks and tight ends. I think the running backs are strong, especially if Barkley's knee holds up. I think that's the big question mark on this team. But the receivers he got in the middle, Jerry Jeudy, who should take a step forward. Robbie Anderson reunited with his old quarterback that he had a lot of chemistry with. I love Brandon Cooks as a number 1 receiver in the 8th round. Curtis Samuel and Nico Collins, I think, are nice upsides here. Rich Rebar, it kind of depends on Barkley's knee, but other than that, I mean, if it checks out, this team will be a competitive one as well.
this is what we're looking for in wide receivers. We're looking for guys that put up big numbers last year, can put up even bigger numbers this year. And Gerald Everett, we can talk about him making Waller-like improvements in his production.
Moving on to, we talked with Con and Laser here at the 7th spot, so we'll talk about Brian Drake and Dwayne McFarland's team in the eighth position tonight. Ryan Tannehill, Baker Mayfield, Ryan Fitzpatrick at quarterback, Derrick Henry, Kareem Hunt, Jamal Williams, Tariq Cohen, Devontae Booker at running back. Receivers are DeAndre Hopkins, Terry McLaurin, Odell Beckham, Devontae Smith, Cortland Sutton, Devontae Parker, Brian Edwards, and De'Ami Brown. The tight ends, TJ Hawkinson and Austin Hooper. Farrell, I'm not a fan of the tight end depth, although Hawkinson should cover up that. And the running back depth, to me, is not here in this draft. The receivers and quarterbacks are great, but running backs and tight ends leave a little bit to be desired.
They're going to have to hit it with wide receivers. They kept seeing these wide receivers. That's what fell to them as the running backs went off the board, and they couldn't resist themselves, and I can understand that. Many of my teams through the years have been wide receiver heavy and running back light. This is not a bad team. I'm not particularly intrigued with their quarterbacks. Somebody talked to me that they heard me being a little bit down on Baker Mayfield, who did improve last year. And they said that Baker Mayfield's problem was that he was in 3 games last year that had extreme weather situations. Well, they haven't moved the franchise. They're going to go and play in Cleveland again, and guess what? They're going to have extreme weather situations in Cleveland, and maybe not 3 of them, but you get my drift. I love picking up Fitz, but they've got a problem if Fitz is not successful, because he may not be the quarterback for the entire year. I hope he will be. I think he will be. But they've got a little bit of problem at the quarterback position, I think.
Robert Trentz from the 9 spot takes Justin Herbert, Matt Ryan, and Ben Roethlisberger as his quarterbacks. Running backs, Jonathan Taylor, Cam Akers, Miles Sanders, Damian Harris, and Damian Williams. Receivers are Jamar Chase, Kenny Golladay, Michael Pittman, Henry Ruggs, Emmanuel Sanders, Traquan Smith, Marquez Callaway, and then tight ends, Kyle Pitts, Jared Cook, and Anthony Farrell. The quarterbacks and running backs, awesome. This team will go as far as the receivers and tight ends will take them.
He's going to need double tight ends to score, and he might get that out of Cook, especially. He's in this dual flex. I would like to see guys going a little deeper at tight end with guys that I think are going to catch more passes. Ferkser, I'm not high on. A lot of people are. I hope I'm wrong. When I say I don't particularly like a player, I don't want to necessarily be proven right. I want to be proven wrong. And he's going to make a big difference for this team if he is right on Ferguson.
You can check out 2 Hats 1 Mike on Twitter and Scott Barrett DFB on Twitter for Mike Leone's and Scott Barrett's team. There's going to be plenty of analysis on that. The last one I want to get into is the defending Kentucky Fantasy Football State champions, Petrie and Larson, here at the 11th spot. Tom Brady, Trevor Lawrence, Sam Darnold at quarterback. Running backs, Austin Eckler, Antonio Gibson, James Conner, Kenyon Drake, Darrell Henderson. Receivers, Amari Cooper, Mike Evans, Deontay Johnson, Brandon Ayuk, Marvin Jones, Terrace Marshall, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Tight ends, Tyler Higbee, Cole Kmet, and O.J. Howard. Farrell, this is why I don't like drafting with Petrie and Larson, because this is the type of team I would draft. I think it's very well balanced, and I think this is going to be a competitive team as well with those stud receivers and those stud running backs.
These guys are so strong and such solid drafters, and I can almost predict not the player they're going to take, but the kind of players and the way it's going to look. And Balky, that's the same thing you are. You're a very, very good drafter, and that's what's going to happen here. They got the steal of the draft in the 11th round with Drake, especially in this format. I'm very high on that. I would have liked to see them do something a little bit different at tight end. However, it's sneaky good. My guess is that they had their eye on Everett, and somebody got him a few picks before they could grab him. Love what they're doing at quarterback. Yes, it's always a team that will challenge. I'll say that based on the ability of Drake to contribute to this team and a couple other players, the veteran players that they've taken at receiver to do just a bit better than they did in the previous year could deliver them a championship here.
And if you want to compete against Petrie and Larson as they try to defend their title at KFFSC.com, go to KFFSC.com, sign up for the main events there, and compete against them, compete against me. Farrell runs a great operation there. And Farrell, you will be running a great operation tomorrow night. Pour yourself a bourbon circa 9:30 Eastern time tomorrow night, because we're going to be on the air from 10 until midnight covering Pros versus Joes 3. Thank you so much for popping aboard tonight, man. Talk to you tomorrow, dude.
See you then, Bogey.
Farrell Elliott, ladies and gentlemen, follow him on Twitter at JFarrellElliott. Follow the KFFSC on Twitter at KFFSC. That completes our coverage of Night 2 of the Pros versus Joes. I want to thank Darren Armani, Jason Petropoulos, Mike Stanowski, Jason Kahn, Aaron Laser, and all the guests that we talked to tonight. Tomorrow, we go live at 10 o'clock Eastern Time until midnight for the Sweet Baby Jesus League number 3. Joes include Rob Vieira, Biplab Mandel, the defending champion, Derek Kappas, Robert Coe, Matt and Andrew Stone, and, of course, Ed and Mike Boo going to be competing against the Pros, featuring Rotoballers Josh Hayes, Alien Fantasies David Dodds, NBC Sports Edge's John Daigle, Dynasty Depot's Nelson Verbit, Fantasy Mojo's Darren Armani, and NFL.com's Marcus Grant will all be drafting tonight. I want to remind everybody, register for the inaugural Best Ball Tournament today at myffpc.com. Don't forget, we have some great Dynasty startups as well as the 2021 Football Guys Players Championship. Register for those. You can win $500,000 in the FPC this year and $100,000 for second place. If you want to get in on the main event and you want your draft slot by August 1st, now is the time to pay off those teams and register. And if you're already registered, $400 off each additional main event team. That deal expires in 7 days. And, of course, don't forget about KFFSC.com. Thank you so much for listening. We'll get these draft boards posted shortly, and we'll talk to you tomorrow. Your week continues.
This has been another episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, presented by MyFFPC.com. It was broadcast live and heard around the world. Balky and Farrell will be back next week with more analysis, interviews, and advice from guests much smarter than they are. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk with you again next week.
I just want to give a shout-out to Kevin Williamson, the Bourbon City baller himself and noted Kentucky Wildcat fan, obviously a Devin Booker fan as well. He is going to be joining the chat room tomorrow, a very insightful individual. You heard him on the Chasing the Helmet podcast about a week or two ago, giving his thoughts on there. Now, tomorrow night, I'm going to be honest with you, probably will not be my finest podcasting work, as I will have one, sometimes two eyes on the Bucks-Suns finals game from Fiserv. I am missing out on a grand opportunity to head to Milwaukee for the game in order to broadcast Pros versus Joes. So I apologize if the last half hour is not going to be great, or the last 45 minutes or an hour is not going to be great, but hopefully we can keep it on the rails. And let's face it, if the Bucks are getting destroyed at home, it's going to be a great podcast. Thank you so much for listening, everybody. We'll talk to you tomorrow night.